Hello everybody, my name is Noah Meehan, and this is the Arc of Truth. Today, there has already been a summit that has been held currently in Quebec, Canada, known simply as the G7 Summit. Basically, this is the economic summit where the top 8 nations, now 7 with the exclusion of Russia from the invasion of Crimea back in 2014, basically, they talk about economic matters and even a few political matters. Basically, like tariffs, which is definitely brought up especially in the first day of the summit, and also a few political situations as well. Maybe even like the situation with the Korean Peninsula. But I don't think that was really talked about in this summit, although it should be an interest in Japan's mind, as they are definitely a part of this group. But I've actually heard some weird reports, especially from the British Broadcasting Corporation, over saying that President Donald Trump is actually being more isolated because of the tariffs that he imposed on the EU, on Canada, on Mexico, and on China a few months back. So that is definitely been the major issue throughout this entire summit. Now, to be fair, this definitely was going to be like that from the very start. I mean, we're talking about the EU here. They definitely are in a position where they support free trade. They especially are supporters of globalism, and even Canada is definitely on board with that. And I think they too are also with the G7 summit. So that has definitely been the major issue. But here's the thing: I think Donald Trump, since he imposed these tariffs earlier this month, like literally, I think it was on July 1st or May 30th, this was a message to the EU, to Canada, that the US is not going to back down. That it wants its jobs back, and it wants to look out for its own interests. That, I think, is what he was trying to convey to the entire European Union and to other nations as well. But here's another thing that I actually am surprised over. Donald Trump actually called for Russia to return to the G8 summit after its exclusion due to the invasion of Crimea. Now, I'm a little iffy on this because I cannot believe I'm actually saying this, but I agree with Angela Merkel over the fact that Russia was definitely the one who invaded the Ukraine on its own sovereign territory, and it's basically at war with Ukraine itself. But at the same time, I don't think anything is going to be accomplished if we are just trying to exclude Russia. If we're going to provide sanctions on them, then fine, and we're going to definitely take a big stand against them. But at least we need a communication of some sort to maybe try to work this out so that maybe the war in the Ukraine is eventually ends. But I actually think that this is actually supposed to be a little bit of a power play by Donald Trump. The reason why I think this is a power play is because he's actually making some controversial move. The idea of adding Russia back into the G7 summit and become the G8 again. Now, this is controversial because because, like I said before, Russia invaded Ukraine. But this is even more of a controversy because of the idea of protectionism. I think actually, despite the differences in politics and ideologies between the United States and Russia, we're in a more protective stance over our economies. So adding Russia to the G7 summit would definitely bring a bigger message to the EU and to places like Italy, Germany, and Britain and France that this obviously needs to change. Donald Trump has previously said many times before that he is in favor of free trade, but it also has to be in favor of the United States and her interests, which is definitely understandable. And if Russia were to be placed back in the G8 summit, to an extent, this would be giving us an economic ally. True, we're still going to have major problems with Russia, like in Syria and the Crimea, but still, in terms of economic relations, that would definitely bring a different trend towards what's going on in the EU. Like how the idea of globalization is just sending out jobs and sending out jobs to other countries across the world. It's not really doing too good for us at this moment. So again, I think that was meant as well as a message, aside from just the tariffs as well. So it's definitely not a surprise that Donald Trump is actually isolated from many of the other G7 summit countries, like Canada and of course Germany. But here's the thing: I don't think it's going to happen for that long, because Italy, which is definitely one of the members of the G7 summit, is definitely a Eurosceptic kind of government. It's more populist, and they've just gone to power this June, and back on June 4th, I think it was. It was actually 4 days ago. So this would still add a possible ally and a possible proponent over ideas of protectionism, over globalism. And I think this would definitely spill an end to the EU and Germany as well, because Germany, as the the largest economy in all of Europe, it basically runs the entire EU. And if this were to if countries were to go against the gray, like Italy, for example, and even Britain to an extent, especially with Brexit, they would be losing a lot of economic power and leverage. And they certainly do not want that. They definitely want to have a bigger hold over the economies of Europe. That is without a doubt the case. They definitely want to be the top dog of Europe. But again, I think that as a result of what's happened in Italy, Britain, and especially a few other places, and it's being shown more in the G7 summit, and it's definitely aggravating the fears of the demise of globalization and other multinational organizations like the EU in general. I think that's actually is more presented in this summit, especially the fact with Donald Trump being all isolated from many of these major countries. I mean, after all, they are major economic powerhouses. Japan is a major economic powerhouse. I think it has the third largest economy in all the world. I think that's the case. And the EU, combined with all the countries in Europe, they could easily outpace the United States in terms of large economy and also gross domestic product. That would definitely be the case. And the fact that there is this Eurosceptic community and this whole idea of protectionism and looking out for national interests is definitely a worried factor for anyone who supports the EU. Because if these do continue to get more steam, and I believe that they will continue to get more steam, especially with the soft coup that the EU tried to commit in Italy, it will spell doom for their own powerhouses. And again, it is evidently showed in the G7 summit. My name is Noah Meehan on the Arc of Truth. Please post your comments down below. I would love to read and hear about them, and if possible, I will reply back to you. Subscribe and share this video with your friends, family, or whoever. Oh, and don't forget, like it.